Hello guys, how are we doing? This is our Mastering Stress Masterclass, and in this we're going to go over what stress actually is and how we can reduce stress in the short term, the medium term and the long term. We're going to be giving you actionable tips in which you can use at home, and at the end I'm going to give you a little bonus tip on how actually you can use stress in a positive way. So, first things first, what is stress and how does it affect us? Stress is essentially just a term for a reaction in our body, and it's something that's hardwired into everybody. Everybody has the stress response, and it's essentially our sympathetic nervous system. So when we are stressed, we activate what we call our sympathetic nervous system, and that releases adrenaline into the body. So if you're mentally stressed or physically stressed, our body reacts the same either way. It creates the same outcome. And what it does is it compels us to act. And that can be in the form of taking action, so running, fighting, whatever it is. Or we can be compelled to speak. And that's, when we're stressed, we are more likely to say things maybe we shouldn't say. And it has a bunch of other effects in our body, like drying of our throat or raising our heart rate, feeling twitchy. That is all side effects of stress, and it is something that just naturally happens. And as I said, it doesn't matter whether it's mental or physical stress, our body creates the same outcome. It reacts the same either way. So what is the difference between acute and chronic stress? So you'll hear these terms thrown about a lot. I'm chronically stressed. I'm going through chronic stress, and chronic stress is something that is discussed a lot because there are negative effects of chronic stress. We do not want to be stressed all the time. It will have negative impacts. But acute stress is something different. So acute stress is in the moment when we have experienced a high amount of stress for a moment of time. So say you're at work and your boss is having a go at you and your heart rate gets high and you're having a really manic day. That is acute stress. It's a moment of high stress. Chronic stress, however, is when that carries on. Generally, what we say is if you are finding that stress is beginning to affect your sleep and persist for days, that is chronic stress. So anything more than a moment of stress. So if you are not sleeping very well because of stress and it's happening for days, weeks, months, years, then there is a problem with that and we need to combat that. Also, acute stress, where it can be a good thing, can be a bad thing if we don't know how to react to it. We don't know how to observe it, use it in the right way, or reduce it in a moment. And then that could cause us in that moment to do things or react in ways that we didn't want to. So first, we're going to cover how we can reduce acute stress in the moment. So how do we tackle stress in the moment? Now, we all have it. We all have moments in our day where something is stressed us out. Maybe we're driving down the road and traffic is mental. Somebody's right up your butt on the car. There's something's just jumped out in front of the road. There's people driving all over the place and it's stressing you out. So there is a way in which we can tackle stress in that moment so we can relax. And that is called the physiological sigh. And some of you may have heard of the physiological sigh before. It is a form of breathwork. It's a type of breathwork practice. But what's great about the physiological sigh is there's research showing that with this type of breathing, it reduces your heart rate and slows down the nervous system and taps into what we call the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is what sparks up when we're stressed and shoots adrenaline into the body and gets us all hyped up. The parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite of that. So it's going to help us relax. So the physiological sigh gets us into that. Now, what this physiological sigh is you take 2 small inhales followed by a long exhale. And that's the important part, is having a longer exhale than the inhales. And it's to do with our diaphragm. So when we have the long exhales, our diaphragm goes lower. And creates more space for our heart, so it fills up more, and that will then send signals to our brain, in which will then reduce our heart rate, lower our nervous system, and relax us. So what we do, and if you can have a go now, if you're able to, and that is 2 small inhales. So you take a small inhale, and then another one, and then a long exhale through the lips. Same again. Now, this can take about 20 to 30 seconds to have an impact. So you may need to do 5 or 6 rounds of this. The physiological sigh is actually something that we do naturally just before we go to sleep, or at night while we're sleeping. We can do that if we need to get rid of carbon dioxide. So it's something our body does already. And when people are quite heavily crying and really upset, it's something people naturally do to try and calm themselves down. So the physiological sigh, if you're you're starting to feel really overwhelmed in the moment and starting to really stress out, and things are getting a little bit too much, doing this breathwork practice will help reduce your stress in the moment, allow you to kind of take a step back, relax, and then move forwards. And you only need to do about 5-6 rounds of this breath work to really start to see a good impact. So that is how we tackle stress in the moment, is the physiological sigh. Next, how do we tackle stress in the medium to long term? Now, medium term stress is usually in weeks and months. We would say is in days, weeks and months. And this is chronic stress now. We're talking about chronic stress, and chronic stress is linked to heart disease and many other metabolic diseases and cardiovascular diseases and lots of stuff, essentially. So we want to reduce that as much as possible. So in the medium term on how to reduce stress, what we do is we need to deliberately expose ourselves to stress and then learn to relax during this exposure. Now, there's many different ways in which we can do this. First, and what is on a bit of a rise at the moment, which lots of people are trying already, is cold water exposure. So you can either do that with a cold plunge, if you have a cold plunge, if you're near the sea and the sea is cold, getting in the sea, or if you don't have access to those facilities, then a cold shower works just fine. But the key would be to get into the cold plunge, cold shower, and then actively try to relax during that, which is the challenging part. But doing what you could do is do the physiological sigh while you're doing this, or try to control your breathing, relax, think about the experience, think about what's happening, and learn to relax during a stressful period. Also, what also works is exercise. So doing hard exercise, so some hard training. So within the app, if you go to any of the Metcons or the HIIT workouts, doing those kind of workouts and then learning to relax yourself during those workouts when it starts to get hard. So nice, and trying to bring your breathing back down. Try to relax, try to take in the moment, and then what this does is when stress eventually happens, because it will happen whether we like it or not, is something that's going to come at some point. You know that you have the ability to relax during a stressful time, and it helps us, it builds up our baseline of how much stress is going to affect us. Now, in the long term, so this is months and years, if you've been chronically stressed for months and years, the best things we can do is work on these previous tools. So work on deliberate exposure to stress, also doing the physiological sigh. But the two most important things really are regular sleep and regular exercise, and good sleep. Working on regular exercise and good sleep. If sleep is something that you are struggling with, then head to our sleep masterclass within the app. We have tons of information there on how we can get better sleep. But regular exercise is also going to help. Then also there is some study now saying that social interaction helps reduce long-term stress. And when we say social interaction, I don't mean just on your phone talking to people on TikTok. In-person social interaction with people you trust is going to help reduce your reduce your stress. So in the medium term, deliberate exposure to stress and learning to relax during this exposure. And then in the long term is regular exercise, good sleep, and doing any of these previous tools. So a little bonus here. Stress isn't always bad. There are good times that stress is needed and acute stress is needed. Acute stress, what that can do is activate your immune system. So if you are feeling like you might be coming on with a bit of a cold, or there's people around you that are getting ill, then inducing a stress response can help activate your immune system and potentially keep any illness at bay. Now, one way in which we can activate or induce a stress response, activate our sympathetic nervous system, is to use a type of breathing called, as some of you may know, the Wim Hof method of breathing, or Tumo breathing. And it's more of a hyperventilative type of breathing. So it's quick inhales and exhales. So it's more, for anybody listening, is more and what I would do is rounds of 30 of those breaths, then hold your breath for 30 seconds to a minute, and then do another round of 30, hold your breath for 30 seconds to a minute, another round of 30, hold your breath for 30 seconds to a minute, take a deep breath, big exhale, and then relax. This is going to increase your heart rate and activate your immune system, which will then potentially help you if you are feeling like you're on the border of getting ill. It's going to help potentially fight some disease off, maybe some illness off. And it's also going to help get you used to, like this stress exposure, like we talked about earlier, get you used to having that stress exposure in your body and then relaxing afterwards. So inducing a stress response every now and again just to keep things at bay. And also if you need to expose yourself to a bit of stress just to get used to it, this is a great way of doing it on your terms. And that's the key point. So everybody, this is our quick masterclass on how to manage stress, starting with physiological side in the moment, exposing yourself to stress and learning to relax during it for the medium term, and in the long term, regular exercise, good sleep, doing all of these tools, and socializing with people you trust. And then our bonus here, if you want to activate the stress response, doing some Wim Hof breathing, or Tumo breathing as it is formerly known. Thank you very much.